Welcome to another week of The Inimitable Black Woman. I'm your host, Donna. And if this is your first time here, welcome. Glad to have you here. There's snacks in the back. Feel free to go get some. Other than that, I'm here. If you need a hug, hands out. I'm not going to hold y'all up too long. We're going to jump into this interview. I'm really happy about this interview because literally I was like, I am just like you. I just could relate so much to this story, to this interview, which you can tell by how much I talked more than normal. But yeah, let's just jump into it.
What is your name?
My name is Sharon. Full name, Sharon Margaret Irving. I got a shout out to the family names in there. So the Sharon Irving is what I go by.
Where are you from?
Born and raised in Chicago. From Chicago native. I rep Chicago hard. So yeah, I'm all day Chicago.
What is one of your favorite childhood memories?
I would say going to Indiana Beach, which is like so lame now. Like nobody probably goes to Indiana Beach. But my mom and dad used to take us to Indiana Beach. And I love my parents because they divorced, right? But we would still do things as a family, which is really rare. And so I'm blessed that they didn't let whatever was going on get in the way of that. So we would take these trips to Indiana Beach. And it was just fun. I mean, it water parks. I feel bad for the kids right now because they can't do any of that. And then, of course, I would say going to California to visit my cousins because it was always warm, and we learned how to swim and like ride bikes there. So it was just, I think California was like this larger than life place. And on the flip side, when they would come here, they'd be like snow. So just so many memories with my cousins. I didn't grow up with a lot of siblings. It was me and my brother, and then my sister. She's older and lived in North Carolina, so I didn't get to see her much until I got older. So my cousins, we really kind of grew up together as siblings, and just like so many memories of being in California. And till this day, like I wouldn't be mad if I ended up out there because I'm just a summer girl. I love the summer season. So those are the two memories that stick out for me. But that's the question.
So what were you like at 13?
So yeah, I would have been making that transition into high school. I was different. And I know everybody says that. I was into like alternative rock, and then I was also into like Mace and Puff Daddy. Depending on when you were born, these names might be like what, but I loved music. I loved escaping, and even then kind of make believing. So my room was covered in posters of like, I think it was like Mace, Backstreet Boys. I was on the Backstreet Boys side, not NSYNC.
I was an NSYNC person. I'm gonna let that go.
I do love Justin though. Justin is like timeless, but yeah, I was definitely into all types of music, and I kind of went through this phase where I wanted to like dye my hair purple, and but pretty shy, which is interesting because I perform and sing on stages for a living. But I was very introverted and still am, and sort of in my own world. Also was really into like healing. Like I would watch these healing preachers. I'm all over the place, so I said, Mom, I want to heal people, and so I was different in the sense that like there were a lot of things, like our family never forced us to go to church or anything, but I was always drawn to like spirituality and faith, but it was never like forced on me. So I think that's interesting at that age because not a lot of younger kids really are drawn to that. So but there was a lot going on in the personal realm that I think I found some sort of comfort in a spiritual space. So but yeah, I was very eclectic. Had a lot of girlfriends and boy crazy, and exploring just who I was through music. Always writing songs, always creating. So I'm a Scorpio too, so that kind of, if you're into that, I think we can be intense. And so, but it's from a good place, like very passionate. Even at 13, I was like, I want to feel what I'm doing. So, yeah. And also a goofball. So it's like all these different sides. And I think that's what makes us human, is just having all these different shades, and we carry volumes as people. So that was me at 13. And so, yeah, I just haven't thought about that girl in a while. So,
So we're going to dive into her just a little bit more. What advice would you give her, that 13-year-old you, if you could go back?
Ooh. The first piece of advice I would give her, this is just what comes to mind, like unfiltered advice, would be to be okay with being alone. Like, you don't have to have a boyfriend at 13. That was, and I don't know where that starts. Like, I need a boy, but looking back, that's the time where, you really don't have any responsibilities. You can do you, and being in a relationship is responsibility. And at 13, like, who knows that? So I kind of wish I would have told her, it's okay. You don't need a boyfriend. You just don't. You're good, girl. You're good. You don't have to like be booed up right now. But it also, I will say that the little boyfriends I had they were nice guys, and I learned how to, I made a lot of good friends, like male friends, and I think that's really healthy to have male and female friends. So, and then the last thing I would say to my 13-year-old self is, you're enough. You're enough. You might feel like you still, like every guy, and I've always been like, I'm a petite, and you look around and all the girls are like busting out in the bras and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it just hasn't happened. And so even at that age, and like, even now, like I'm a smaller chested woman. And so I think that body image starts to really become a thing at 13. And just thank God there wasn't social media, but I think that still, just being reminded, like normalizing different body types, and say that this is good, this is beautiful. You don't have to stuff your bra. You don't have to get all this padding.
Are you stuffing your bra?
I don't think, okay, so I never stuffed. There were girls that did, and so I was like, okay, some of my peers, but they had like the push-up and the paddings. Oh, Jesus. Death to padded bras. Like, shout out to, there's a really amazing bra. I don't know why I'm talking about bras, but called Pepper. And they make bras for like smaller sizes, and they're so flattering. And for years and years, I would go to like Victoria's Secret, and they had all this padding. And it's like, you don't need it. Like, in fact, it looks better without it. It's like sexy, you know what I mean? And so, but at that age, I think the thing was like push-up bras. And so I think just like the older you get, you realize like what really matters. And, when you see your friends, I've had friends who've died to like cancer. And so it's like, that puts it in perspective. Like, let me be thankful for what I have. But at that age, I think it just being told, I would have told her, you look good, work what you got. and it doesn't really matter. I mean, at that point, like trying to put so much emphasis. And I think I knew that. I think I knew it was important, but the struggle was like everybody else putting so much emphasis on stuff. And I always felt like the most beautiful thing about a person is their spirit. Even at 13, like I wasn't into the same things other people were. So I think I always felt different in that way, because I wasn't like, I didn't want to be like whatever was supposed to be cool. And so just being okay with that. But sometimes you feel like, okay, I'm not, I don't know, it's just a mental game. And so now I know that's a beautiful thing. And that's the way I was wired. But I just wasn't into a lot of the things that other girls were into. And like, I'd rather sit and talk about conspiracy theories with my dad than like try to be cute. I don't know, but I was different, and I just think that embracing that, the older I've gotten, I've done a better job at it. But at that point, I just felt different and awkward, and yeah.
So you mentioned like one of the advice things that you give to her off your head is it's okay to be alone. And
Yeah.
so I would ask for you at what age and at what point did you realize that it's okay for me to be alone and I don't have to be with someone? Like, how did that come to be for you to realize that?
Yeah. I think I realized that. How real can I get?
Oh, there's literally nothing you can't. You can say cuss words.
Woo!
You could, that's always the thing. People are like, can I cuss on here? I'm like,
right.
You can cuss. No, you can, I want you to be, transparent.
Okay.
I set this up for you to be transparent.
I love it. And I have to remind myself constantly that like transparency and vulnerability is strength. And so the things that we go through. So what I'm going to share is, and it may not even be for some people transparent, but it might be like, oh girl, that's it. But I was married, and I think it was in that space that I felt the most alone, because there was a disconnect, and we were both great people, and you know, we just weren't each other's person. And it took a while to realize that, right? And so in that space of being young and like younger than I am now, I realized, okay, I kind of was alone. And that, I think that kind of blows people's minds. They think you're in a relationship, or you see someone who's married and you think they're not alone. But I was very much alone for a season. It was probably like a year or two where I was on the road and traveling. And so I realized in that like, wow, I am okay with being alone. But it was scary, because it's like, I'm supposed to be one to, and so that was really difficult. And we were in therapy, and then I went on to do solo therapy. And I think he probably realized that too, like, but it was in that, which you might not ever think, because it's not something that you're supposed to be. And I think in a healthy relationship, and I'm in a really great relationship now, never thought I would love again, but you want to see that person. And I still, to this day, I love my alone time. I love being with myself. I love, getting a fart, no one's around, like all these things
that's hilarious.
Sometimes you just need, I'm at a place now where I love my boo, but I love my time with me. And I think it was in that space with my ex where I realized, like, I'm okay. Because I entered into it sort of looking for this person to complete me and to fill a void. And so when that didn't happen, I really had to like sit with myself and process, like, why was I so scared to not, why was I afraid of being alone? And at the time, a lot of my girlfriends were getting married and engaged, and it was sort of the thing to do at the school, small Christian school here in Chicago. And they had this joke, ring by spring. And, but I really never, so I had this experience, and even today, I struggle with feeling bad about it, because I don't want it to sound like I was, not, like this person wasn't satisfying. We had a great friendship, but I was discovered that I was okay being alone in that relationship. And when I didn't get what I thought I was going to get out of it. And relationships it's supposed to be a give and take, and not like, what can I take from you? And so the more comfortable I got with myself within that, the more I was able to let go, and we were able to move forward and start again. So it's hard. It was painful, very painful. Divorce is death. Anybody that's listening that's been through that knows that it is like a death, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But it has brought so much new life. In that death, there's been a lot of resurrection to the newness of life. And so, and it's never too late, because I'm no spring chicken, but I'm not like, I feel as youthful as I've ever been, and I don't feel like damaged goods, which I thought I would feel like because I went through that. But yeah, didn't want to get into all that, but I do think that it's something that I want to share because I know that people, even if it's not divorce, like any kind of death is going to isolate you for a minute. And get this, at the same time I was going through the divorce, I lost one of my best friends to cancer. And so it was a double whammy of like, whew, the wind just out of me. And so I felt I didn't want to be around people. And it was just like, my faith is really important to me. So at that time I just prayed a lot and cried on my face. And it's crazy how losing kind of forces you into an isolated space, but that's where you really, if you allow it, if you lean into it and feel your feelings, you'll discover that like there's some beauty in that space of just being alone and grieving. So grief has really taught me how to be alone, if I'm being honest.
So
yeah.
One of the things you mentioned was you went into marriage to fill what you thought would fill a void.
Yeah.
What was the void that you thought it would fill?
So I was in a relationship with, and for me, again, I think interracial relationships are beautiful. I was with a white man, and I definitely discovered in it that I had some like internal things going on, and I didn't really realize it until I realized some of the major differences in like worldviews. So I don't. So that was sort of a void I was trying to fill. I think is just my Blackness being something that is so beautiful and important to me, but there were some internalized oppression things going on. And so I think that whenever you are entering into an interracial relationship, you kind of have to make sure like you and the person are on the same page. Because there's Black men that don't think like I do. And there's white men that are more woke than so. But in this case, we just have very different kind of political ideas and worldviews, and they were both good. But I just think, for me, I guess I was just trying to figure out like value and self-worth, and there's a little bit of that in there. And I think the void maybe was just like maybe not enough self-love, just and embracing like who where I'm from, where I am. But I don't know, I think even in that though, I was very real and upfront about my Blackness, and I didn't hide that. So I really, as I'm even processing it now, I think that it was more about just wanting to be loved, and I had been through a really hard breakup prior, didn't really allow myself time to heal. And so but it really speaks to the bigger purpose in my life, and I feel like it is that I'm a bridge builder. And so ever since I was a little girl, I was always like bringing people together from different sides of the fence. And one thing about the relationship is that we were both sort of outcasts in our families, and so we connected because on a really genuine level. But I think just sometimes in life, there's people that come in and they're there to teach you a lesson, and it's really painful and hard. And once you realize like, yeah, I maybe was in this for different reasons, like you have to be honest and move forward. But that's really hard to do. And I know people right now that are in relationships and they're compromising or they're violating themselves, and they feel guilty, and but I just want to remove all shame, like, and just say that, again, it's like this, when the sun sets, it's a beautiful thing. We never look at the sun setting and think, oh, that's horrible. And sometimes sunsets on relationships, and it's a beautiful thing. You got to just take the lessons. And so even as I'm speaking, like, I could say, like, I was trying to fill a void, but even in that, like, I don't feel shame because of that, because I didn't know. And like Maya Angelou said, when you know better, do better. And
I agree with you. I don't think that's a I think that's the reason why I touched on that, because I think it's a very common thing.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's a very common thing to look to relationships, look to people, look to things to fill something within yourself. And sometimes you don't know that. You think that you're just being deeply connected, when it might be you're being deeply connected to what you think it's giving you. So I want to touch on something, because I think you brought it up, and I think it's something that for me I've had to like kind of explore. So like, because I date outside my race too, right?
Yeah.
And I had to I had to just doing my own kind of self-discovery. Like, I totally believe interracial dating. I do it, so I know I believe it works.
Yes.
But I think you brought up the good point of, are you attracted to or getting something potentially from these relationships from people outside your race because it's validating you in a way, especially because so you talked about how like in middle school you were that girl that like rocker things, like you were eclectic, you were different. And I don't know how it was for you, but where I was, I didn't fit in being that black girl amongst black people, obviously amongst white people. And so I think that you can internalize, I think for me, I internalized that a little bit. And so I think there's sometimes a validation that you can feel from dating someone white or someone that isn't black, that validates it's a weird like internalized oppression of like validating like you as a human being. Like if this white man, and this is not all the time, this is your own self search. Like this isn't I still date out of my race, okay?
Right.
But like it's just a true thing. Like you have to ask yourself, like, is one of the things that I'm looking for out of this person to approve, like validate like me as a human being. Like if, especially, okay, so I went to school that was like all white, right?
Yeah.
And so in those environments, you're like the outlier, right?
Yeah.
And you're not getting attention from any of the white boys. You're not getting attention from anyone. That's how it was for me. That was my experience. And so how I internalize that, I think, is a little bit of whenever I was starting to date or interested, I would look for white men sometimes as a way to validate and say I was pretty, because I went through so many years of them not, or being like unacceptable. And so this thing was like put in my mind of like, if a white guy likes me, then that means I'm pretty and I'm great and I'm validated. So you mentioned that a little bit in that, and I was like, that's a real thing to like break down.
I'm like, wait, what? You're literally like describing and putting words to some of the things that I was attempting to say, because yes, I wasn't the girl that really fit in. I didn't feel black enough for the black, or white enough for and even in music, I just never really like, where do I fit? And so, I have experienced that, and I can admit it, admittedly, like I would seek that validation. I would. And it's, again, the school that I went to, it was predominantly white. There weren't a lot of us there. And so like the one black guy on campus that everybody liked, it's like, there's one, you can't really.
There's one, and the black girls and the white girls like them.
Like, I love this conversation. It's so real. And then even that, like, I find myself side-eyeing sometimes, but I'm like, no, one of my best friends like dated a black guy on campus, and she's like my bestie, and so I don't have a problem with that either. Like, that's love. The world just needs more love, and
but the real thing about it is that race does play a role in how we choose our mates. We're not all coming from clean places. Like
no,
I'm not embarrassed to say that, because I think that's a real thing. It's just real, and that's not to say that interracial dating can't happen, but it is to say that sometimes you just need to make sure you're whole and healthy, because you don't know why because you could be choosing, and this is even if you're your own race, right?
Yeah.
You could be choosing any mate out of your voids. And it's just one thing that you touched on was just the dating outside your race to fill the void of like being accepted, like feeling accepted racially or whatever difference you are by like someone who's white or something. I felt that I've done that. I've been a part of that where I felt like more of like, oh, well, this white guy likes me, so like I must be really jazzing.
Right.
But really like they're like low key, they are just as much, they could be just as much trash as everybody else.
Right. And that's what I like. I used to hear like, oh, white men won't give you the same issues. Like, no, men are men. Men
are unfortunately men.
Yeah. And really like mature men will even say to you, like, we could be stupid at times. Like my boyfriend says all the time, he's like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm really just don't know something, but you make me better. But yeah, this is a real thing. And I mean, I could talk about this all day. So I really could, because
I'll let you put the button on it. I kind of opened up. I just haven't had that conversation with anyone.
Really?
Because I'm normally like on my end just like saying it, but I'm normally not talking to someone who can relate to that. So like, when you mentioned that, it was just something I picked up on that I was like, yes, I know what that's like.
And how do I love like what you said. I love what you said. Like, it's about like being whole and healed and healthy. Like, because like you said, it black, white, going into a relationship where you're kind of like half loving yourself and looking for that. It's just, on whatever side of the, Asian, Latin, and I really love what you said there. And, it looks different for everybody. And so I'm wondering too, like, there are questions and conversations that need to be had, I guess, probably especially in this current climate. It's got to be harder, I think, dating interracially, because there's so much like pressure, like, to, as people should be aware of what's going on. And so, but I just love what you said. I think that's the bottom line. Like, and nobody can tell, like, and I know in my heart, and there's things that I'm still healing from today, that I know my triggers and areas where I'm like, ooh, I'm looking for some validation there. And so it's a process, but I think love is beautiful in all its forms. And I just, but I think that in general, like, humanity, we, especially now with like social media, there's a lot of loneliness and depression and anxiety. And I wonder if it's because just there's a lack of wholeness. And then it's like, why is that? So that's getting into something deeper. But whatever we can do to be whole, I think is going to make it all work better. And that on both sides, like, even if it's like, hey, we're dating, we're not married, but let's do therapy. Let's talk about, because I wish I would have done that in my relationship. I wish I would have had those harder conversations, this will be the last thing, because like I said, I could talk about it all day. There were moments where, like, I think when Trayvon Martin, something had happened, and I would hold back because I knew that, it might be difficult for him to talk about. And I just would say, lean into those hard conversations with that person. Because it can be a beautiful and redemptive thing when you do get to a place of like understanding and where you're both on the same page, because that can be really healing for people to see. So definitely have those hard conversations, because I didn't always lean into them. And then when I did, so it would maybe turn into a fight because I maybe went about it. Because that's the other thing. Like, you can get so angry and want to like get, you don't get it. But it's like, there's a way, I think, to so it's just, it can be messy. But you said it so well. Get whole, get healthy. And it just bothers me when I've done it, when I see friends of mine or people I know that are like, I'm just gonna date white guys because, black men are, even this statement, black men ain't ish. And it's like, that's not true, and I hate that that's even like a narrative that we've put on each other. Date because this is a person you like and you love. But if it's because you are trying to escape some toxic thing that you think, that I don't think is good. But if it's like a preference, then that's totally healthy and beautiful. So yeah, I hear that statement a lot, and I think it's toxic. And I've said it. I'll admit it. I'm with a black man now, and it's funny. He lived in Sweden for a whole year, and like is like the whitest black boy I know, because my ex was Swedish, and so I always say, like, all things work together. Like, I just think it's funny that he speaks Swedish, and, we'll walk into a store and he'll start speaking, and they're like, brother, what? And so I love that, because guy, it's like he's perfect for me because I have never always felt like, again, I was Black enough for the Black guys that I was interested in. But I'm learning, just like how you are showcasing on this podcast, that there's so many different types of, we're not all monolithic. And my boyfriend's a prime example. He's like, he's just different. And there's a lot of us out there like that. And I think that, it's cool. And dating white guys kind of prepared me for some of the things that he's into that, like, I didn't know about until I dated white. It's fun, right? Like, you learn, there are things that they do that are just different. They different. But I learned a lot, and it was fun, and I celebrate that. I celebrate that kind of love.
If you had the attention of the entire world, what would you say?
I have to say what just came to mind. Just love. I think lead in love. Like, whatever we do, if it's from a place of love, there's so much happening right now, so much being said from a place of hurt and pain, which is good too, because we need to sit in the tension of things. But help me, Lord. I just think I would say that, lead in love. And that you can, I guess in my mind, I have like the church, and there's so much division right now, and it's really painful to see, but you can walk in faith and be wise, like wearing a mask, or to me is a symbol of like loving our neighbor. And I think for people that are like, just have faith and we don't have to do this, but Bible talks about wisdom too. And I think that something I'm learning is like, you can have faith, you can be fearless, but you can also be wise and practice wisdom. And I think wisdom is such an underrated word. I see a lot of people moving in foolishness, and it's foolish. And I'm like, I feel like an old grandma, but like wisdom is wisdom will protect us. Wisdom will keep us from some unnecessary things. And so I just think the words I would say, love and wisdom, are just two things that I'm really leaning into these days, is loving myself better, loving people better, and being wise. And, I think that the world just needs to know that all things work together, and that we're a part of a larger story. And out of pain, out of brokenness and the rubble, like we can still see the stars. And I'm big on one of my favorite songs is Diamonds by Rihanna, because when you think about diamonds and how the darker the night, the brighter they shine, I just think that let's not be afraid of the darkness. I'm like, bring it on, because that's where humanity shines. That's where diamonds shine the brightest. And so I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, I think things might get worse in our world before they get better, but we get better as they get worse, if that makes sense. Like we are diamonds, and we get to shine in such a dark moment. And that's a really awesome invitation. That gives me chills. The thought of me being this bright light in a dark moment is just exciting. It's exciting. So, I would tell people to find your shine and do not dim your light. Do not dim your light for anybody, because we need light. We need light bearers now more than ever.
I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. I was so happy to have Sharon on, and she was just awesome. There's so much in the interview I had to cut out because we talked for so long. Like, we literally talked for an hour, and I was like, okay, this gotta shorten it, baby, gotta shorten it. So if this is your first time here, please, as always, rate, review, share, subscribe. Please go and follow Sharon at Sharon Irving Music. We didn't even get to talk about her music. There was a little bit where we talked about her as an artist and her connection music. I didn't even have that on here because we talked so much about everything else. But, as always, go follow the Instagram at the IBW. I post clips there that maybe weren't in the interview. Also, you can see the interview and see us talking. and having a grand old time. And if this is your first time here, there are past interviews with many women that are amazing, that are different, that are just bringing their heart, their soul, their funny, their weirdness, their everything to it. So yeah. And if you have any questions, email me, info@theibw.com if you want to get interviewed, if you want to recommend someone to interview, for me to go interview. I'm up for that too. And I hope you're having a great week. Bye, y'all.